Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Spending time with students is one of my favorite things to do. And so I hope that this is helpful to you because it's something I've been looking forward to. And before I jump in, I know I'm like the last speaker of the day, right? And so you're a little bit burned out. Who here is graduating next week? So you got a lot of people graduate. It's like you're almost done. So for those of you that just raised their hands, what are you planning on doing after graduation? I'll start here with you.
Well,
What's your game
I'm
plan?
going to be serving a mission.
Okay, very cool. Do you know where?
No, I find out tomorrow.
Find out tomorrow. That's exciting. Very cool. Who else? Somebody else raise their hand. You. What are you planning on doing?
In the fall, I'm headed down to Dixie.
Okay, that's great. Dixie's a great school. Very cool. One more person. Right there. So you that just volunteered somebody else, are you graduating next week?
Junior.
You're a junior, so have you figured out what you're going to do after you graduate? Yeah, what's the game plan?
Probably going on a mission.
Yeah? Very cool. And you, so you're graduating.
Yeah.
What's your plan?
I'm going to school in California.
In California, where in California?
In San Diego.
Okay, very cool. That's great.
Yeah.
And so for those that are going to school, have you do you know what you want what you want to study? Be fair. So I'm like very vigorous head nodding. What do you want to do after school?
I'm going to the U to study biochemistry.
Okay, that's awesome. What do you want to do with biochemistry?
I want to be a doctor.
You want to be a doctor? That's great. So you got a plan. That's awesome. So when I was graduating high school, at that point in my life, I had been to Tijuana, Mexico, and I'd been to Victoria, British Columbia, and that was the extent of my international experience. And I decided to serve a mission for my church. I ended up getting assigned to go to St. Petersburg, Russia. And for me, that was really hard. I had no idea how I was going to learn Russian. When I was a kid, I had really bad speech impediments, and so I had to go to Utah. I lived in Logan at the time, went to Utah State, and it was really, really hard to learn how to speak English. And so like the idea of learning Russian was super overwhelming to me. I had no international experience, not much interest in what was happening out in the world. But then I ended up going down this path that before I knew it, I ended up spending a couple years in Russia, came back, was going to study business at Brigham Young University, and then ended up changing to international relations. And since then, I've gone on this very dramatically different path than anything I would have expected that I'd be doing when I was sitting in your place as a junior or a senior in high school. And so I thought about what I could share for a few minutes. And I'm going to ask a few questions, and I will just call people out if I'm not getting hands or participation. But as I thought about it, it's like, okay, when I was at your point of life, of somebody who was not that interested out with what was happening in the world, had no plans of doing much in the world, what advice would I give to myself now that it's been a little while? I graduated high school 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, this is right after 9/11, there were a lot of big things happening out in the world, but it just wasn't that engaging or interesting to me. And so I try to think through what advice I could give as you finish up, the seniors graduating, the juniors finishing up and jumping into your senior year, to maybe help you think a little bit more about what's happening in the world, why it's important to all of us, no matter what you do career-wise, but then also kind of tee up a few things that you can keep in mind as you finish up school, whether that's a senior year in high school or going to college, that could help you think through some possibilities to go get some good opportunities and have an exciting career engaging internationally. Who here has international experience? Who's here has been to another country? Okay, so you were like kind of like waving your hands. I'm curious to know, like Canada? Yeah, like the 51st state, right? Like barely international. Okay, so Canada, but that's international. Anybody from Canada may be very offended right now. I saw some other hands. What's that?
I'm from Canada.
You're from Canada.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
totally different
I took
country.
offense to that.
You took offense, okay.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry, we love Canada. Canada's a great place. Canada is one of Utah's most important trading partners. So we love all things Canada. But yeah, culturally, linguistically, geographically, not too dissimilar from what we have here in the United States, but definitely international experience, so count that. You raised your hand, I think, right? Where have you been?
I'm from Japan.
From Japan? Born there?
No, I just lived there for like most of my life.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. How long have you been back? Did you come back here to Utah?
I still in
Fourth year? Okay, that's great. And for everybody else, would you have interest in going back to Japan?
Yeah, I want to be there, not here.
Yeah. So share, how did living in another country enrich your life?
I feel like I'm more culturally aware of other people in my life. Like, I just feel like I'm more accepting and like loving of everyone's culture.
Yep.
than just,
Yep, can you kind of see, you've got a bit of a broader perspective? You can see things a little bit more from other people's perspectives, which probably helps you have a more accurate kind of understanding of what's happening in the world. Would you say that's true?
I feel like I'm very well versed in like culture and the world.
Yeah.
Because, like, I try to think.
Yep. If there's one skill set that will be important no matter what career you pursue, and just as like good citizens of Utah and the United States in this world, it's being able to see things from different perspectives. If you think about how divisive the world is and how polarized the world is today, the skill of being able to take a step back and to see things from somebody else's perspective is so important. And that will make you a better doctor, it'll make you a better, missionary, it'll make you better in college and everything that you're doing. It's just being able to see the world from a little bit of a broader perspective. And that's something for me as I think about the different countries that I've lived in. I've lived in Armenia, Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and I've traveled to probably 80 other countries and spent significant time in a good number of those. In all of those places, at first it gets really hard to experience a different, like more cultural shock, right? The first time you have an international experience, it can be really jarring because it is very different language, culture, belief systems, priorities. But after a little while, now I feel like I could drop in just about anywhere in the world and pretty quickly be able to understand what makes the person I'm working with tick, like what's important to them. And I can also do that here in Utah and in the United States with what I'm doing for work. And it comes from experiencing another people or culture. And so as I think about kind of a key takeaway today, or a lesson that I hope that all of you will think deeply about, or the challenge, it would be get really good international experience. You can do that in 100 different ways. And over the next 4 or 5 years of your life, it will be the easiest time in your life to do that. And there are ways there's a ton of financial assistance. If you're going to college, there are internships, there are study abroads, there are grant programs. Thankfully, there are a lot of people out here in the United States and here in Utah that recognize the value of everybody, but particularly up and coming professionals and students in getting international experience. And so I am confident that finances won't be a barrier. You may have to work hard, you may have to save a lot, you may have to do some things, but it's totally within your power, your ability to go get some really good international experience. And even if you get there, it's like, this sucks, like I never want to be in another weird place ever again, I promise you that you will take that perspective and that experience with you the rest of your life, and you will be a better global citizen, and you will be more efficient and more competitive for whatever jobs or grad programs or colleges or scholarships or anything that you want to pursue as a result of being able to say, I spent an extended period of time living in another country, interacting with different people, and being able to broaden out that perspective that, what's your name? That Kate experienced living in Japan. So that's lesson number 1. Get really good international experience and do everything you can to try to tee up that opportunity. And again, I promise you, if you are like not able to find ways to do that, then talk to academic counselors in high school or in college. It may take a couple years. It seems like a lot of internship and study abroad opportunities, they're more abundant for after you get a year or two into college. But those opportunities exist, and so please evaluate yourself for those opportunities. If you get down 2 or 3 years and you're like, man, Miles was there and he lied because I'm trying everything, I just can't find an opportunity, like reach out to me at World Trade Center Utah and we'll have a conversation, and I promise you I will put you in touch with people who can tee up a meaningful opportunity for you to go get international experience. And I promise you, take it to the bank. On the flip side of that, as you go through the rest of your college and professional career, you will always be grateful that you made that extra effort to get out there in the world and experience what Kate did, different people, culture, and you develop a little bit that skill set of being able to drop in somewhere else in the world and figure out how to operate effectively, and then forever view things from a little bit of a different lens. So that's lesson number 1. Before I move on, any questions, comments, pushback, concerns? May disagree, think I'm full, you know what? Okay, so that's what we're all committed. We're all gonna do everything we can to get really good international experience in whatever way it can go. And not to belabor this too much, but it's so important. Like a couple people have mentioned mission. It's really interesting here in Utah, we have the highest rate of people who lived in other countries than anywhere else in the nation. And it's not just because of missionaries. Like that is a lot of people that I interact with internationally. I assume it's like, oh, you got a bunch of missionaries. It's no. 50 years ago, the vast majority were probably missionaries. But no matter what your faith or religion or no religion, no matter what your interest is, because of the fact that we do have a little bit of a legacy here in the state of missionaries going out into other countries, I see way more high school kids going out and doing Peace Corps, service opportunities, right? Some are religious, faith-based, some are not. But there is a very high degree, a high rate of young people from Utah going out in the world that has nothing to do with missions. So if the mission's not your thing, I just know there's a whole world of opportunity here in Utah, and the likelihood of a young person from Utah going out in the world is way higher because of some of this kind of tradition or culture of people, young people going out into the world. And if you end up not going internationally, but you go somewhere domestically, if you do a mission route, that's cool too, because you're gonna get a lot of the same experiences living somewhere else here in the United States. But there are options available. If you need help, track me down at World Church in Utah, and I will help because it's so important. Okay, next lesson, key takeaway. Who here is interested in national security, foreign affairs, wars, things that are happening out in the world, to the extent like you're like, feel like you're kind of consuming news reports, magazine articles, books on any type of international issue on a somewhat regular basis? Okay, so we got here, we got a couple hands here.
Okay.
One back there. Kate, I'm done picking on you for now, so you can relax just a little bit. It's right here, got a hand up. So what do you do to be like an informed global citizen?
I basically just look to the news articles. I watch a lot of YouTube on what's going on, just in different global affairs.
Did our Canadian friend in the back hear that? No. So to restate that a little bit louder, so we made fun of Canada and now you're checked out. So, our friend, what's your name?
Spencer.
So Spencer, I asked him how he engages, how he's a good informed global citizen, and Spencer said, one more time really loud so everybody can hear.
Just read a lot of different news articles and watch a lot of YouTube videos on just different global affairs. I try to get both sides and sort of different perspectives, like you were saying.
Yep, that's really cool, and I love that you mentioned getting different perspectives, because this kind of second key takeaway, this case kind of a 1-2 step. So one, what happens in the world? One is generally interesting. Think about like really, okay, maybe this is not gonna be true. As I think about the movies and TV shows that I am very interested in, a lot of them have to do with history or wars or foreign affairs, like things that are happening in the world. Like it's generally an engaging topic. It's not boring, I don't think. I'm biased, I admit that. But it takes a little extra effort in order to engage. So we've got a war happening between Russia and Ukraine. And I could speak for hours about breaking that down, why it's happening and everything else. I won't bore you with all that. But it's a big deal, right? It is something that's unique to the time that you're living in. We're living in a super dynamic time where a lot of, say, 10 different phases. You've got end of World War II, that's a big deal, that feels like a long time ago because it was. You have Cold War, which I kind of grew up in the tail end of the Cold War, but that is like a phase of world history, which is really important. And in the 90s, Cold War ends, you enter this weird decade where it's like, we're like the unipolar moment, like the United States is like the last big country, like superpower that's left. So we dominate, but everyone's trying to figure out like, what does this mean long term? And then you get 9/11. And for 20 years, terrorism, counterterrorism has been the dominant theme of everything happening out in the world. Because of the pandemic, that kind of put that in the rearview mirror, but we're kind of in this transition phase again. So now, Vladimir Putin's criminal invasion of Ukraine is launching in a new phase that will be the phase that is dominant for the next 20 or 30 years. And it's a return in a lot of ways to geopolitics. And so it's not driven by the post-World War II world. It's not driven by the Cold War, even though with Russia being more assertive, there's some themes there. But you have Russia, you have China, you have the European Union, Brexit, leaving the European Union. You have a lot of division here in the United States, which is very, very dangerous. You have an investment here in the United States to try to strengthen our partnerships with our friends in Canada and Mexico as well to create a more unified North America. Like, it is super dynamic, and it's happening right now. And what's happening right now is going to be important for you no matter what career you pursue. And so my lesson or my challenge to you would be to recognize that we're in a really fascinating time. It's very dynamic. And so the earlier you can start to be, like Spencer is, a well-informed global citizen, like, you're trying to read what's happening, think about it a little bit, right? And it's your level of the time that you want to spend on this will vary based on your personal interests, and that's totally fine. But at least, like, read the New York Times or The Economist or the National Review or whatever kind of your primary news source is. Don't just rely on Twitter and social media, although that can make a really, really good source. If you're interested in, like, Russia and Ukraine, you can find a list on Twitter of Russia and Ukraine that somebody else built. And you can find lots of really good sources. It's a very easy way to fairly passively feel like you're kind of in the loop on things. But just take a little bit of time to read up on what's happening in the world as just kind of a generalist consumer. And I promise you that will make it so that you can just better understand the context in which everything happening in the world is taking place. But as you do that, like Spencer said, it's critical to also think through what your sources are. And if the only news you're getting is Fox News, recognize you are getting one perspective. If your only source is MSNBC, recognize you're getting one perspective. And so you're gonna get a very narrow lens of what's happening, and you're gonna be looking through somebody else's lens and the biases that they have, which we all have biases, so that's okay. But if you challenge yourself to read up a little bit and then try to get a couple different perspectives, then you're gonna become more discerning. And you'll be in a position where you'll be able to reach your own conclusions about things, inform your own opinions. That will help you better understand the global context in which you're participating, either as a student or professional or whatever it is that you're doing. It also will be an important skill set that will help you be more discerning with how you're acquiring information and then internalizing that to set up your own worldview in which you're going to be engaging on a range of issues throughout your entire life. And so again, becoming a globally aware or globally engaged citizen is this important skill set that you'll develop that will have broad applicability even if you never want to do anything international for the rest of your life. That's the second lesson. Become globally aware. Take a little bit of time to read up on what's happening in the world and challenge yourself to make sure you're really understanding the sources of your information, and you're getting it from a few different sources so you can have a better, accurate sense of what you do about it. So I'm going to pause there for a second. Questions, comments, concerns, ideas? Okay. So lesson 1, challenge yourself for the next few years to get some really good international experience. Lesson 2 is to start now, becoming more globally aware of what's happening in the world, and then getting different sources and thinking through, what does this mean for me? The third one, and the final lesson or takeaway, we'll get into act, to figure out what it is that you are passionate about, and how do you use having a broader perspective and the ability to think through how different people view situations and events and values and interests and everything else, to take the knowledge that you acquire by being a good globally engaged citizen, is knowing what's happening in the world and discerning about different information sources, and then to use both of those things to elevate your ability to excel in whatever you do. And whether you're going to go to the U to study biochemistry and become a doctor, or whether you want to go to, let's see, Spencer, what do you want to do?
Some kind of drafting or modeling.
Drafting or modeling, and you want to get into drafting and modeling in whether it's construction or whether or not you want to go back to Canada, because we love Canada as a sovereign independent country to our north. It is a wonderful place. Whether or not you're going to be sort of a mission or Peace Corps or go to school in California, San Diego, or down in southern Utah, right, is you have the ability to look at things from different perspectives, is you have the ability to take information and are aware of what's happening in the world, you will be more effective. You will excel better. The effort that you put towards whatever you're doing, you will see better results. But then always make sure that you know what your why is. Why is it that you want to be a doctor? Why is it that you want to get into drafting and modeling? what do you want to get out of going to school down in San Diego? And if you can get really clear about what your motivations are, then you will be better at calibrating what you are doing on a day-to-day basis to open up opportunities and to maximize your ability to make a positive contribution on the world around you in whatever sphere of influence you have. And that sphere of influence starts off relatively small. As you go through life, it changes in different ways. But the challenge would be to think through your ability to have a positive impact through a global lens. Right? The world is in a bit of a tough spot. It will get worse over the next couple of decades. I have no question about that. And again, we can talk for a very, very long time about why we should expect more conflict, less cooperation, more significant challenges on a global level over the next 20 or 30 or 40 years. But foreign affairs, international relations, all of those things, global trends, those are really simply the cumulative effect of individual actions that are happening all around the world, which means it's incumbent upon all of us are required to do what we need to do to have a positive influence on the world around us. And as we do that, each and every one of us in this room, and we're encouraging others to do that, that is the surest and best way for all of us here. Now I'm thinking through the Utah lens, because we're here in Utah and I work at World Trade Center Utah, for Utah, for each and every one of us, to have a leavening or a positive effect on the world around us. And if we will act intentionally, and if we will commit ourselves to excellence in doing everything we can to make the most of the different opportunities that we have, and if we just try to be good people, then we will be doing our part, our small part, on this cumulative effect of individual decisions, which really is what drives foreign affairs and global trends and everything else. And if we do that, then I promise you we will find success in every aspect of life, whether it's school or work or service things or anything else. And at the end of the day, we'll be okay. Even though my assumption is that the world's going to get more challenging. And we're seeing that in Europe, we're seeing it in China, we're seeing it in South Asia with Afghanistan, in Russia and Ukraine. We're seeing it here domestically with a lot of the challenges we're facing. Like, the world's going to get tougher. But if we will be challenge ourselves to get out and get really good international experience, so you will be able to have that global perspective. If you will work hard to be a globally engaged citizen and read up about what's happening in the world and challenge yourself to get it from different sources, and then if you'll commit yourself to doing whatever path you pursue, doing your best, trying to play your small part in making individual actions and a contribution that will have a net positive effect on the rest of the world, then all those things come together and you'll be successful. You'll be happy, the right doors will open at the right time, you'll be making a contribution, and you'll know at any given moment that you're doing the best that you can, and you can feel good about that. And that's going to lead to prosperity and happiness, and ultimately, it's good for you as an individual, it's good for the community, or that community is defined by Heber, Utah, the United States, or the entire world, and you'll be able to go through life with that confidence and that success, independent of what may be happening around us. So with that, I think we're almost out of time. Wes, any other questions?
Any questions?
Any questions? I know I'm talking really big picture. The input I got was soft skills. I'm trying to think kind of soft skillsy, but if you have any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer those now or stick around after to answer personal questions.
Can I add on one thing to your point number
Yes,
one?
of course.
UVU has I gotta make sure I read it right, a Global Intercultural Distinction Award that is an add-on to any major.
Yes.
And my daughter is working on that right now. She's in Finland as her kind of capstone project for that. And it's been fabulous, but it's an add-on to any degree.
Yeah, and I would
Sure,
advocate,
universities have
anybody
that.
studying anything, like that should be, in my mind, like a core curriculum in general, but that's an awesome program. So anybody doing UVU, that's an option. And many universities have very similar add-ons that I would strongly encourage that you take a very close look at when you start planning out your academic course.
Okay, let's give Miles a round of applause.